You're listening to Inside Eyes, and I'm your host, Laura Northrup. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Inside Eyes. I'm your host, Laura Northrup, and this series is about the use of entheogens and psychedelics to heal from sexual trauma. In today's episode, I talk with Ajesh, who has a story about using ayahuasca to work on a repressed experience of sexual trauma from childhood. Before we get into the interview, a word of caution. None of the episodes in this series are suitable for children, and the topics are emotionally evocative, so please take care of yourself as the listener. Ajesh lived a lot of his life not remembering what happened to him as a child. But fast forward to this year, something happened in his family, and we aren't going to go into what that is because it isn't his story to tell, but it's important because the present day situation with his family started to unfold pieces of his past. The interview starts with Ajesh explaining the lead up to this big realization. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's lovely. So in the moment before, I had a lot of different things coming up for me, and I was just starting to be really observant of the stories that were playing out. And in that moment, there was something that was happening with my family where when I was listening to that story, and sharing it with friends that, hey, this is happening, this is coming up. And as we were sharing stories from our childhood, I realized I had repressed something from my childhood that I had completely, absolutely blanked on. And I did not remember it. I didn't remember at any point of time trying to forget it.
I asked Ajesh how it impacted him to suddenly remember this painful event from his past.
It started to really impact me in the moment of being like, okay, wait, hold on. How have I built on this narrative? How have I built myself on the story? How is this changing and coloring every past experience of mine from that moment on? And it really shook me. It really shook me because for a moment I was like, I lost all my self-worth. I lost my ability to know if my heart is in a good place, if I'm worthy. It was sexual trauma, and it came up in a way that the memory came up slowly. It didn't come all at once. The first memory was more of something happened, and I don't know what, but I know something big had happened. And over time, more of it revealed itself. And I do want to say that the way it was revealed, there was a reason for it. And in a way, it was my own daily practice and my ability to, make sure I'm ready for it, Not all be like, hey, this is everything that happened, now go deal with it. It was very different because it was like in my past, it would have probably come up and I would have just totally lost my shit. I totally would have lost my shit. And here it was, almost like opening a flower. But it was like, as each layer was opening up, there was a lot of different things that were coming up. And I would sit with it or process it. And it was just like starting to just remember more. And as I remembered more, just being like, okay, what is coming up? And paying attention to that story. As more details were starting to come up in terms of okay, this was what happened. This is how it was dealt with. This is how the response was from beyond me to the folks I, turned to for help and how they showed up. And there's still a lot of, missing points in the story. And the ultimate question that I was left with is really okay, that was really traumatic, but I still don't know how exactly did it color my experience. I know it had. And I know I had brought it to every relationship, every moment of intimacy that I had, and I didn't know what I was bringing in. And I felt a lot of shame.
So eventually, Ajesh embarks on a journey with ayahuasca to do some deep healing around this trauma from his past. But we also talked a bit about what was already happening in his life that allowed him to be more open to healing.
The old me would have run away.
Yeah.
And just been like, I'm completely not deserving. And the change was I turned to my friends, my family that I have selected as my own, and they showed up and they allowed me to process it. And then just being able to, pay attention to the dialogue that was happening inside myself and hold space for it.
So, for a little more context to this story, ayahuasca is considered by many to be a spirit, and people reference her in the feminine as she, and often refer to her as a grandmother, as this is how many people have seen her in journeys. People also often shorten the name ayahuasca to Aya. Another interesting aspect of ayahuasca ceremonies is that they are often practiced in a group setting with an opportunity to share your prayers, intentions, and reasons that you're coming to the ceremony with the whole group. Additionally, there is often a space made to share in a group after the journey where you're invited to talk about your healing path and what happened in the journey. I'm highlighting this aspect of the ceremonies because many people struggle with shame around sexual trauma, and it can be both potentially terrifying and healing to do this work in a group setting. Soon after Ajesh had started to connect with his memories from childhood, he heard about a ceremony coming up and followed that opportunity to work on the sexual trauma. In this next clip, he talks about how he showed up to the ceremony.
I was honest. I started off by sharing my prayer, sharing honestly how I was feeling. And being like, hey, this is, there's moments where this wants to completely unravel everything I've worked really hard for, and lose myself. And all I can ask for is to be healed. I don't know what that form of healing is. I have no fucking clue what that healing is, or what that journey to that healing is. And all I am here is to try my best to show up and see whatever she's sharing and just be present. There are going to be times where I'm like, I'm just at my worst and treating myself with so much of hate and blame. But we're going to work together through this.
Can you say a bit more about what the setting of this particular ceremony was?
Absolutely. So most Aya ceremonies tend to be, more than a day or two. So this was 2 days over a weekend, and usually having more than one day is important because the story is unfolding. And, sometimes she wants you to sit through multiple ceremonies to really be able to work through it and figure out how it's going to move forward.
Can you walk us through what happened in the course of that weekend?
That weekend, I woke up. Actually, I'll start with the whole week leading up to it. I just started, listening to my heart and to my intentions and being like, what is this healing that I need? What do I need to be revealed to myself? What strengths do I need to, shift through the weekend? Definitely felt a lot of anxiety leading up to that day. And during that day, I just started paying attention to all the stories, all the signs that were coming through of being like, the healing is not just in the night. The healing starts, when we start with the intention to sit. Everything that plays out after that is part of the healing. So on the day of, it was very much like, okay, there's an aspect where we sit together and we open the ceremony, and part of opening that ceremony is sharing our prayers and being witnessed for those prayers. And it's really, really important to share. And you don't have to share what happened to you. You just have to share the prayer. What is the healing that you need? And when it was my turn, I just listened to my heart and shared whatever my heart was desiring. And being like, yeah, like, I don't know what I'm doing with this. I'm feeling like I'm being unraveled. Help. And not being ashamed of asking for help, not being ashamed of the story, just being like honest with myself, with her, and seeing like, okay, let's see how this needs to go.
It sounds like you're saying that you were feeling a lot of shame at the time, and you were able to go in and be very vulnerable and open with a lot of people, and I wonder how that was for you.
Part of working through a story is also learning what that first part of the share is going to be. The choice is always ours of what we want to share. But at the end of the day, it's us coming to terms with the story and then being able to eventually share it. I really believe in that. And part of that first step was, like being able to witness other people's shares and other people's requests. There's power in that, because there's this aspect of being like, I'm not alone. Yeah, I'm struggling with what I'm struggling with, but everybody in that room is struggling with a story that they want to break free from. I'm witnessing that, and that gives me strength to being like, you know what? Yeah, this group of people, some of them I might not know intimately, some of them I might. And there's different aspects of that come up, because even the people you know intimately, you're sharing now a part of yourself that they have never seen before. Mm-hmm. And that's beautiful. And at the same time, the people that you don't know, you have a choice of being like, hey, I am struggling with this. See me, hear me. I ask of you to hear my story. I ask of you to hear my prayer. And that's all I can ask. And it's up to them how they want to listen. If they want to judge, that's their choice. But here I am, just being open and vulnerable. During the first night, I was like, take me back. Show me what I felt. What was that thing I felt in that moment? Because I don't know.
When you were a kid?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I don't know what it triggered inside of me, what broke. And I was finally able to name it. And I was able to name it as fear. And it became the pillar for everything else. And that was like the construct I was working with. And I felt right after fear, and I was able to realize what kind of fear it was. The next thing I felt was anger. I have never felt that angry in my life. There's different forms of anger, but that one was like just raw. It was raw on so many different levels, because it was like, I was mad. I was mad not just at the person who, did what they did to me. I was mad at society. I was mad at everybody, because everybody saw me as this child, and that I'm a child, and that nothing really big happened, nothing really important happened, or just being like, like trying to see if I'll forget about it.
The response that you had when you were a kid from people who were around you was that the experience was somewhat minimized, that because you're just a kid, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Exactly. And I was mad. And I was mad at the culture I belonged to, where the concept of being intimate is an alien concept. That's something that only adults feel, and being like, wait, hold on. I have not been given a way how to process this. I was mad at myself. Actually, I was really mad at myself as well, because suddenly I was like, wow, every relationship I have ever had, every intimate moment I have ever had, I have brought that fear in. I have poisoned all of those experiences. And that's me. Like, no matter what, that's me. And I am owning it and being like, okay, like, at the end of the day, this is something I've done also. I've played my role after that and taken it forward. And that's okay. And I was like, okay, so here I am. I recognize I feel fear. I recognize all this anger. And then just being like, how do I heal? How do I move forward from this? I have no idea. I really, really have no idea. Sometimes feeling like, wow, like to have this broken inside of us is sometimes the hardest one to heal from. Because it really impacts our relationships with everybody. And it's not just like when we are alone with someone else, it's just how we show up in friendships, how we show up with family, how we show up with different things. It breaks a lot of different things. And it's just like, it's like a hard one to heal from. I was just struggling, and all the things that she was sharing, I was like, thank you. And at the same time, I don't know the answer. And all I felt was like I was swimming in the same loop of trying to ask that question. How do I heal? How do I heal? How do I heal? And being frustrated. And the night ended and I was by myself. I fell asleep somehow. That was the first night. What was important was the sharing circle that I was a part of the morning after. That was the first time since I was a child I've ever cried at that level, where I just cried. I cried my heart out and I shared my story. And everybody in the room heard it. And it felt like the first time I was really sharing everything I felt around it. It was so tough. And at the same time, it felt really great. It was so beautiful to see how everybody showed up for that moment. What were a room of like mix between people I barely knew, people I know really well, and the person conducting it. They all showed up. And the way they embraced me was what I really needed in that moment. I could never have been asked to be held like that. It was the most beautiful embrace I could have ever asked for. It was just the right kind of love I needed.
So, after that very powerful and vulnerable share circle, Ajesh had the rest of the day before the second ceremony in the evening. Next, he talks about the direction his healing took during the day and during his second ceremony.
You have to let the day unfold. And the day was just like amazing. Because here I was like, I knew what my intention was for the second night, which is, how do I heal? It's the same question I ended the first night with, but I felt like I had a major breakthrough. This is when I was reading Spring Washam's A Fierce Heart. And of course, as synchronicities sometimes line up, I was at a point in the book, I had just finished a chapter, and the next chapter, I didn't know what it was, and I turned the page and it said forgiveness. And Spring did such a beautiful job of sharing her story of forgiveness and how she found her ability to forgive things in her life. And it really resonated. And I was like, I want that. I really want that. And I was like, you know what? That's just going to be my intention for the night. I want to learn how to forgive. I want to learn to forgive him, to forgive them, and most importantly, to forgive myself. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. And that was my prayer. And that was how I started the night. I just was like, I was just like taking a moment and feeling like, okay, I'm going to say it. I forgive. And then I would name different people. I forgive. I forgive. And when it would come to the, perpetrator, I'd be like, it took me a moment to be able to say, I forgive. But I paused. I didn't feel overwhelmed. I just paid attention, slowed it down. And until it felt right, I said it one time. And then I kept repeating it until it felt like it was coming from my heart. And it felt great. And I was just like, I'm not going to stop this. If I have to go all night repeating this, I'm okay with it. And I would say, I forgive my parents. I forgive society. I forgive myself. I forgive all my past lovers where I've they've triggered something inside of me and I've blamed them, and it was really, really profound. And eventually that changed from I forgive to another prayer, which was like, I seek forgiveness. I forgive. I love you. Thank you. And it just and I know there's similar prayers like that. And it just felt right. And I would just be like, I would take all the different people. Like every time I'm like, oh my God, I really messed up that person's life, or I messed up what we really had, or I didn't know enough about how intimacy works and who I'm supposed to be and what my roles are supposed to be. So it was just okay, all I can do is seek forgiveness. Forgiveness is their choice, like it is mine. And at the same time, if they've done something that they've hurt me, I forgive them because I need to let it go. And yeah, I just kept repeating it until it felt right. What started the story for me, as I mentioned earlier, was something that had happened to a family member of mine. And feeling like there's a reason why this is coming up for myself. And that I have to now face it. And realizing that the story is playing out for me because I need to be in support for them.
For the family member.
For the family member. And I was trying to learn, what does it mean to show up for them? Mm-hmm. And realizing that I need to share the story with them at some point when they're ready, so that I can really empathize and share my empathy and my ability to, really hold space for them.
Yeah, it sounds like you're saying you knew you needed to do your own healing work to show up for that other person.
Absolutely. So after going through the I forgive cycle and then I seek forgiveness cycle, it was I wondered, I was what's next? What's the next part of my heal? It was really amazing because what happened was my spirit animal showed up, and our spirit animals are beautiful teachers and healers, and they're a reflection of us, and at the same time they have their own power, and they can really do some amazing work around healing and sharing their gifts and their powers with us. My spirit animal decides to show up and really be present for me and actually be like, hey, here, let me teach you about intimacy. Let me show you what it feels like in the best possible way, what it feels like to come from a place of love, be authentic, and being respectful to myself and the other person. And she really did an amazing job of showing me, of loving me, and, just sharing her wisdom of what it means to, feel right about some things like this. And it was really powerful because the minute, right after going through it, it became this, as if it was a break of a new day. Suddenly I felt a major shift inside of me where I'm like, I'm no longer being held captive by my story. I'm no longer being held captive by him. I am breaking free of the story that has been haunting me for most of my life now. I'm ready to approach things with a completely new lens.
At the time of this interview, it had been some months since Ajesh had participated in the ceremony he's sharing with us. Next, I asked if he could describe some of what has stayed with him and entered his daily life from these particular ceremonies.
If I had tried tackling this when I was younger, if it had come up, I wouldn't have had the tools to deal with it. I would have just lost my shit. And here I am holding something that is so heartbreaking for myself. And being able to be like, okay, I can give it the love it needs. I can be tender. I can know how to do the small things that allow myself to move past it in the most best grace I can. And it felt exactly like that. And I also learned that now with every new moment, it's not about just jumping in blindly, but it's about, okay, I'm going to enter every moment. And if I feel anxiety or I feel something coming up, I can just remember to breathe, be present. And the choice is always no. Like there's a choice. I can say no when I don't feel comfortable, or I could say yes and feel whatever I'm feeling. There's no shame, no feeling of like, oh, wait, these are all these stories playing again. No, I don't need to let it go there. I can just be like, nope. No is no. I don't feel sorry about myself, or I don't feel like ashamed or anything. And it's great. It's fucking great because it's like I can be myself. I can actually be more of myself and let others see me. And it's amazing. And it's just led to so many beautiful moments since that I'm so grateful for. And just being like, wow. Thank you, grandmother. You are amazing at the work you do. I do not need to know how you do it, but I know at the end of the day, you have so much love for all of us and allowing us to heal.
There are many paths toward healing from sexual violence, and while each of us has a unique path, I know that many people have a similar story to Ajesh, one where they've really pushed the memory away, and then at some point it resurfaces as an adult and can be totally disorienting and overwhelming. I also know that it can be very difficult for cis men to seek out support due to particular stigmas around being a man and being a survivor of sexual violence. I asked Ajesh what he would say to others who are on this journey and struggling.
It is really, really hard to work through this. I understand that. And it is your story, and it is an important story to work through. And it is really, really brave to take the first step to ask for help. And yeah, like take that first step if you can. There are beautiful allies in the community in the form of therapists, in the form of friends, in the form of family, in the form of, ceremonies, in the form of meditation, that you just need to take the first small step towards something. And at the same time, just be present. Try our best to be present. Feel the feels, feel everything, and just being like, yeah, like if you want to break free of it, it is possible. It takes time and patience and a lot of growing our ability to love ourselves.
All right, many thanks to Ajesh for sharing his story, and thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support the show, please subscribe to the podcast. If you would like to stay connected, you can find me on Instagram at Laura May Northrup. And finally, special thanks to Joey Seward at Left Field Studios for volunteering a lot of additional audio engineering to make this series possible. If you need an audio engineer, he's excellent. You can find his website in the show notes. Thanks for listening to Inside Eyes. Until next time.